In Depth with Dan Carter is brought to you by Ontario Power Generation, proud to be part of Durham Region.
It's time for our in-depth portion of Studio 12 News. Good evening, I'm Dan Carter. Many of us are referring back to the Drummond Report and some of the changes that are happening. We heard from Deb Matthews about the changes that are happening in healthcare, but what about the changes that are being proposed in education? Are they fair, and is there more to the changes by the McGuinty government than what appears? Is this about removing the collective bargaining process? Well, the president of District 13 for OSSFT dropped by our studios to be able to talk about what's happened over this process. We're going to take you through that process over the next 3 nights. Take a look.
Dave, great to be able to spend some time with you this morning, and we're going to talk a lot over the next couple nights about exactly where the province is, where education is. First and foremost, for our audience, what is your position?
I am the president of the Durham District OSSTF, the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation.
So let's walk us back a little bit. Everybody has been pointing to the Drummond Report and saying the Drummond Report made some recommendations about education, healthcare, public service, debt restructuring, all these different recommendations. In your sector, education, what was recommended by the Drummond Report?
Most of the contents of the cuts came in the form of cuts to positions, to jobs, to people in the classroom, administrators in board offices. That's where most of the recommendations came down, along with cuts to things like transportation, computer technology, basically everything that's used in the school. So paring back the entire operation of a school board, basically.
And when you looked at those recommendations by the Drummond Report, first of all, did you understand what he was trying to accomplish? And two is, was it something that you could actually work with, or was it something that would still impact the education of the children of Ontario?
There probably isn't a sector in the public service that can handle cutbacks and say things would be good. Service will be just as good if we take money out of the system. If you take people or adults out of the buildings, the schools aren't as safe and the students don't get as much contact with professionals, EAs, teachers, people that they need to be successful. So would it have been manageable? We just have to make it work. Would it have been a good solution or a good idea? We would say no.
Right. And one of the things that really worried me when some of the recommendations, and they were saying non-teaching positions were where the eliminations were coming, but there was a lot of talk about special education teachers that were on the chopping block. And there's more demand, it seems, that for those kind of positions than ever before. So I think a lot of people were worried about the direction that was going.
Definitely, we're seeing more and more students who are identified, go through the formal process of identification, and they get what's called an IEP, an individualized education plan. And when that happens, the education of that student is more tailored to their needs.
Right.
So if they need more time on tests, or if they need more support through maybe an EA or somebody in the classroom with them, that's made available to them. So we are definitely seeing an increase in that area. And another one is mental health,
yes,
which is sadly underfunded. Teachers really need to be trained on how to recognize it and then what to do when they are confronted with that situation. We have a lot of students who are in trouble. And I mean, just like how difficult it is to come to school and try to learn when you're hungry,
yes,
it's got to be incredibly difficult to come either with a learning disability or a mental illness to be able to go to school and be able to perform.
So you get the Drummond Report, you guys look at it, you know that the winds of change are in Ontario because of the fiscal issues that are there. So you be proactive and say, okay, we have to look at what we can bring to the tables on behalf of Ontarians, because you're a taxpayer also. So you go and say, okay, we've got some really good ideas. What kind of ideas did you guys bring forward?
Well, to start with, when we went to that table, it wasn't a negotiation. We were confronted with, these are the cuts that you're going to have to accept just to be able to sit at this table. So there were a number of things that they wanted to take out. At that point, because they were on YouTube, they were threatening job cuts of 10,000 positions in the newspaper if we didn't agree to these things. We backed away a little bit, thought about what our position should be, and we took the high road. We said, okay, there's a deficit. in the province. We need to deal with that. So we went back to the table, and when we got there, we made some very serious concessions, cuts. Now, this is the union, and that's really important for people to understand. We came to the table and we said, okay, you're proposing 15% cuts to what they call curriculum specialists or facilitators, people who go from school to school and they help teachers implement new programs and things like that. So we said, okay, if you're going to make those cuts to those positions, then you should also cut the administration that you've hired who oversees them, who are much more expensive. And if the frontline workers aren't going to be there, you should make those cuts as well. We came to the table with an early retirement package so that people would retire before they were actually eligible for their pension, which means they take a penalty. So the pension plan will be in a better position because of that, and share with the government the savings of having a teacher who's more seasoned at the top of their pay grid, and be able to have that person come off the books and have a younger person or a newer teacher, not necessarily younger, come in at the bottom. So there's a great savings that's to be made there. The other thing we came to the table with was a 4-year deal. This is the education premier who wants peace and stability in education, and we said instead of 2 years, and we come right back to this again, let's go with 4 years like we have the past 2 times. Let's have a longer period of stability. And within that 4-year deal that we offered them job cuts, or the job cuts I've talked about, but sorry, we also offered them salary cuts. We offered them 0% wage increases. These are the exact things that they're saying that they need. And as a union, we came to them and said, okay, cut jobs, here's some other plans for you, and we'll take 0 and 0.
How good is it to be president to be able to bring that to the table?
I got to tell you, it's very difficult for as a union leader to say, okay, this is the best thing for my members. But because of where we've got to in education in Ontario, I mean, it's world renowned. There are articles in newspapers talking about the way that education is done in Ontario, the cooperation that happens between the government, the ministry, the administrators, and the teachers, and the success is there. It's proven. And to continue that on, we said, okay, let's take a serious look at this, and let's give them a position which acknowledges their problem, meets them well more than halfway, and see what they said. And they basically said no.
Well, that does it for tonight. Tomorrow night, we're going to pick up this conversation. Just a reminder, all this information is available online. Go through YouTube, Facebook, or channel12.ca. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow night, and hopefully a little bit more sunshine. Good night.